I quit my job. I'd had enough of those days spent staring at a screen, forcing fake smiles at people I didn't care about. I took my savings and bought an old camper van, packed up my dog Buck who'd been with me for over 10 years and hit the road. Buck's fur was graying, and he moves slower these days, but he still had that loyal look. As soon as I climbed in, he'd settle quietly in the passenger seat like always. We traveled without much of a plan, stopping here and there, eating burgers, drinking gas station coffee, washing up when we could. Some nights we'd park out in the middle of nowhere, fry up bacon and eggs on the little stove, crack a beer, and watch the stars through the window. I hadn't felt that free in a long time. That evening, we'd been driving down a highway that felt forgotten, barely another car in sight. As the sun started to set, I saw a small, weathered sign for a campground, an arrow pointing down a gravel road. I thought about pushing on, but the light was fading fast, and Buck looked tired. I turned down the road. The campground was tiny, just a few wooden picnic tables scattered around an open space, with a thin patch of trees nearby and a dry creek bed beyond that. I parked near the entrance, killed the engine, and stepped out. The world felt still, too still, with only the wind for company. As the last bit of red slipped from the sky, I lit the small lamp outside the van and heated up some canned soup and hot dogs. Buck curled up beneath the table, his nose twitching at the smell of food. After dinner, I stepped a little way into the trees to take a leak. By the time I got back, night had swallowed the place whole. I switched off the lamp and climbed into the van to sleep. The darkness outside was thick, heavier than it should have been. I couldn't see a single star. I tried to shake it off, but unease crept in. Something about that blackness felt wrong. I woke up a few times during the night, not from the cold, but because of a sound, footsteps, soft, slow, crunching on the gravel outside, a couple steps, then nothing. Then a few more. I held my breath, listening. Buck had his head up too, ears stiff, letting out a low, uneasy whine. My heart pounded as I sat up and peered out the window. Nothing, just endless dark, where the headlights didn't reach. I told myself it was wind, or a deer, maybe a raccoon. But Buck kept that whimper going, staring fixedly at one spot, his eyes glinting in the dark. I decided I'd had enough. I was getting the hell out. I grabbed the keys and tried the ignition. Nothing, the engine was dead. Even the lights wouldn't come on. I tried again, and again. Same result, the air inside felt heavy, like I could hear my own heartbeat thudding in my ears. The footsteps started up again, closer this time. My palms were slick on the wheel, frozen in place. Then something tapped the door, just once, light. Like someone tapping with a fingertip, Buck erupted, barking rough and desperate. I jumped, heart slamming against my ribs. Buck spun around and lunged toward the back of the van, clawing at the door like he was trying to tear through it. The sound outside stopped. I stayed still, barely breathing. Buck kept pacing, frantic, until I grabbed him and held him still, whispering to calm him down. Silence fell again, deep and absolute. I don't know how long I sat like that, minutes, hours. Finally, the sky began to lighten, the first hint of morning breaking through. I felt my body unclench. When I opened the door, cold air hit me so hard my knees nearly gave out. Outside, there was nothing, but on the ground, circling the van, was a clear trail of footprints. Deep, uneven prints in the gravel, bigger than any humans, and wrong somehow. Barefoot, but the toes were too long, shaped more like twisted claws than anything human. I didn't wait. I jumped back in, turned the key one more time, and this time the van roared to life. The headlights flared, the engine hummed like nothing had ever been wrong. I floored it, and Buck huddled beside me, silent, trembling all over. I drove fast, not stopping until that place was far behind us. The rest of the trip went fine. But that night, that place I'll never forget. I got kicked out by my landlord. That morning, He banged on my door with his fist. I dragged myself out of bed and opened the door. His face was red with anger, eyes burning. I hadn't paid rent in 2 months. I don't remember a word he said, just grabbing a few clothes and my backpack and slipping out of that rundown apartment with my head down. I had nowhere to go, so I crawled back into my parents' old car and leaned back in the seat, eyes shut, my mind blank. For several nights, I slept in that beat-up Ford. One of the windows had a crack, and the wind crept in through the gap, freezing me to the bone. I knew I couldn't keep doing this. I needed to leave, start over somewhere else. I got on the highway. With the little money I had left, I drove past stretches of wilderness, gas stations, and abandoned houses. I passed through one town after another, hoping that in the next place, I'd finally find work. But after 2 weeks, I was still unemployed. One evening, just as the sun dipped below the horizon and the sky turned a deep orange, I saw a man standing by the road, waving. He wore jeans, a jacket, and carried a worn canvas bag. He looked like a traveler. I hesitated for a second, then pulled over. He jogged over, smiling, nodding gratefully. I didn't ask his name, he said it himself once he got in. Kevin. At first, everything seemed fine. We joked around, and he told stories about the road, where to find the best steaks, which towns had the smoothest beer. I nodded and smiled, relieved to have someone riding along. It was better than being alone. Night fell fast. The world beyond the headlights became nothing but black. Kevin said he was hungry and asked if I had anything to eat. I reached into the back seat and handed him a half-finished bag of chips. He grabbed it like he was starving and nearly crushed the bag with how tightly he held it. In just a few bites, it was gone. Then he started asking about me, where I was headed, why I was alone. I gave short, vague answers, but his questions got more specific, more pointed, like an interrogation. The mood shifted. I started regretting picking him up. But out on that dark highway, surrounded by nothing, I didn't have much of a choice. I kept driving. Silence filled the car. He stared at me the whole time. I kept my eyes on the road, pretending not to notice. Maybe 30 minutes later, he suddenly said he needed a break, wanted to get out and stretch his legs. I didn't want to stop, but I didn't want to upset him either. So I slowly pulled over. As soon as we stopped, he got out. I watched him reach into his bag and pull something out, a heavy metal rod. He turned toward me, eyes cold, mouth curled into a strange smile. My heart dropped. I reached for the gas pedal, but before I could move, he raised the rod and smashed it into the window. Glass exploded everywhere. I turned my head, ducked, and shoved open the door, scrambling to escape. The night wind hit my face, full of grit and dust, but I didn't care. I just ran. The ground was uneven, all gravel and dry weeds, each step slipping beneath me. Behind me, I heard him running, the thud of his boots and the screech of the rod dragging on the asphalt. I dove behind a patch of dead trees and crouched, holding my breath. My heart pounded like it was going to tear out of my chest. He stopped near the road, looked around. Then, with a grunt, hurled the rod back at the car. It hit with a dull, heavy thud. He stood there for a while, then turned and disappeared into the darkness. I didn't move, just stayed there, frozen, until I was sure the sound of his footsteps was completely gone. When I finally crept back to the car, the door was still open. The window was shattered, the seats were covered in glass and dirt. The metal rod was wedged under the dashboard. My hands shook as I grabbed it and flung it into the dirt. Then I started the engine. The car still worked. Thank God. I turned around and drove. I didn't stop. When morning came, I pulled into a gas station. My face and hands were covered in blood and grime. I didn't know if it was from the glass or from falling while I ran. I bought a bottle of water and washed my face in the restroom. The cashier looked at me like he'd seen a ghost, but he didn't say anything. I didn't stick around. I got back in the car and kept driving. I've been obsessed with Route 666 for as long as I can remember. When I was a kid, my dad would tell stories around the campfire, disappearing cars, ghostly figures at midnight, lights that appeared out of nowhere. I was hooked. I promised myself that one day, I'd drive that road myself. After graduating college, I finally got the chance. I told my best friend Matt about the plan. He laughed at first, said I was nuts, but when he saw I was serious, he agreed to join me on a road trip. We weren't exactly well prepared, just sleeping bags, a few cans of food, 2 jugs of water, and enough snacks to fill the back seat. The morning we left, the weather was perfect. The sky was clear, not a cloud in sight. We played music, sang along, and joked as the miles rolled by. Hours later, the scenery started to change. On both sides of the road were nothing but red hills and dry grass, with the occasional twisted tree that looked like it had been scorched by fire. Eventually, we reached Route 666. The famous road sign was gone, but I still felt a strange kind of thrill. Matt said it looked even creepier than the photos. I didn't answer. I just drove. At first, everything seemed normal. The road was cracked and worn. The tires rumbled as we rolled along. The end of the road disappeared into shimmering heat. After a while, the sunlight grew harsh, bleaching everything white. Matt suggested we stop. We pulled over, sat on the hood, and ate sandwiches. It was eerily quiet, just the wind rustling the grass. Not long after we got back on the road, things started to get weird. We saw a black car parked in the middle of the road. The doors were wide open. No one was inside. Matt told me to go around it, but something about that car felt off. As we slowly passed, I thought I saw gloves still hanging from the steering wheel, but when I looked again, they were gone. We didn't talk much after that. We just wanted to get away. But the car kept showing up. We saw it again, and again. By the 3rd time, we were silent, too afraid to speak. The sun dipped below the horizon, unnaturally fast, like someone had yanked it down. Darkness swallowed everything. We decided to stop for the night. The wind had picked up. The car shook slightly. Neither of us could sleep. Through the window, I saw the black car again, parked quietly by the side of the road like it had been waiting. Sometime around midnight, we heard a knock on the window. Both of us looked up. A figure stood just outside, still, blurred. I couldn't see a face. I yelled, asking what he wanted, but he said nothing. Matt tried starting the engine, it wouldn't budge. The figure didn't move. Matt kept twisting the key, cursing under his breath. The engine finally coughed to life. We floored it, drove like hell. The black car vanished, so did the man, but then the road started repeating. Every few minutes, the same scenery. The same sign, the same rock by the shoulder. By sunrise, we were exhausted. We thought we'd find a town, a gas station, anything, but there was nothing, just road, like we were in a loop. The gas gauge hit empty. We coasted to a stop. When we stepped out, we noticed faint cracks on the pavement like the imprint of countless footprints. I had this weird feeling. This road wasn't meant for people, it was left behind by something else. Matt wanted to walk. We followed the highway, the sun baking us, the heat rising off the asphalt. We kept feeling like someone was behind us, but every time we turned, there was no one. Around noon, we saw a figure ahead. At first, it looked like a normal guy. As we got closer, we saw he was wearing a tattered suit, skin sunken and dry, arms hanging limp at his sides, like he had no strength left. We called out. No response. When we were nearly on him, he slowly turned and walked into the desert. Matt grabbed my arm and said not to follow, but something pulled me in. I took a few steps before the man stopped. He lowered his head. His shoulders began to tremble. I backed away, terrified. When I looked at Matt, his face had gone ghost white. We ran all the way back to the car, and somehow the black car was there again, parked just behind ours. This time, the doors were shut. The windows were black, like 1,000 eyes staring back. We didn't waste time. Together we pushed our car to the slope beside the road and let it roll. The engine caught. We drove like maniacs, not looking back. Night fell again. Finally, we saw lights, a gas station. Old and dusty, but open. We pulled in, half dead from the ride. An old man at the counter looked at us like he'd been expecting us. We didn't say a word. We paid, filled up, and never looked back at that cursed road again.